Hey. An extra one, or is that?
Oh, yeah, I got an extra one. Yeah, we're good. I think it's on the ongoing. So, well, I gave them out. I don't know if anybody else got.
Good morning.
Yeah, I can give it.
My name is Chris Caius. I'm Chairman of the Administration Committee, and I'd like to call this Kane County Administration Committee for Wednesday, January 11th, 2023 at 10:15 a.m. to order. Oh, please.
Berman,
Permit here.
Davis,
Davis here.
Ford, Gums, Young,
Young is here.
Juby,
Juby here.
Caius,
It's present.
Tepe,
Tepe here.
Hirag. You have a quorum.
Okay, great. Thank you. Then I will entertain, well, actually, if someone would like to ask for unanimous consent for the approval of the minutes from December 14th, 2022.
We'll move.
Okay, well, we don't need a second, but Mr. Berman has asked for unanimous consent for the minutes of December 14th, 2022. Is there any comments? Or is there anything needs to be changed? Hearing none, then we'll just consider that done. We will be deferring, because it didn't quite make it to the agenda, the November 9th minutes until next month. Then we can begin with, well, let's see, the financial records are attached to the agenda. And is there any public comment from anyone online, in person, or in writing?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is David Young calling. And
I'm sorry, this is
I-
who online?
Dave Young.
David
Oh,
Young.
David Young. Yes, sir, Mr. Young.
I had a question. I was going through that report last night, and I saw that there were a lot of line items for Granger, and it really didn't list what that was specifically for. And I know that when they go through the report, they're probably going to discuss that. But I'm curious, because there seem to be just
Sure.
dozens of line items from Granger, and they're an expensive distributor. I'm just curious if that could be a component or something that you could buy from somewhere else. And that was my comment for now.
Okay. Thank you. Well, I think we can get you hooked up with the finance. And
I would recommend, this is Roger from IT and Building Management. I would recommend you could address the question to me or to Henry Thompson, and
Oh.
we'd be happy to answer that.
good point. Yeah, good.
Oh,
Thank you.
Okay, should I send an email to you, or should I, or
You can do that, or you can call us at the office. Either one, we'd be happy to. I don't know if, Mr. Chairman, if you want us to address it during public comment. That's-
Probably not. No,
okay, no problem.
Oh.
We'll do.
we'll just try and shortcut it so we can get him some information is all. All right.
Yes. Okay, I'll do that.
Could I ask a question? Could you CC the rest of us with that information that you send to him?
We can, yes. That's
Just
what
so
the
we all
committee
have
would
the
like to
same,
know.
not those same information?
Yeah.
Without responding back to it to violate open meetings, but just for information?
Sure.
Thank you.
That was Juby asking that question for
So
information.
what we're looking for is the request, what information would you like? And you send it in an email, and then we would reply to the committee. That's fine.
Okay. And if any of the new members have any questions
Sure.
like that too, follow along.
Yep.
It's a lot of information. Like drinking from a fire hose. Okay, no other public comments that I am aware of. And those were sort of internal anyway. Let's see now, then we'll move to item 5, Executive Director's Report, Mr. Roger Fonstock.
Good morning. This is Roger Fonstock, the Information Technologies and Building Management Department. So this morning we have a brief report. We're gonna probably not go through too much of the financials in this report. So your questions, if you have them, please ask us either after the meeting, email us, or we can talk by phone. But the financials are relatively thin because we're in the first month basically of the year. So we've only done 8% of the fiscal year for this year. But we also have with us Jason Dwyer from White. He's going to also be speaking for a minute about capital projects that White is working on. So when we get to that part, I'll stop and I'll let Jason speak for a few minutes on projects that he's working on with us. So again, you know, some of the goals and objectives when we started this process 9 months ago, 10 months ago have evolved and changed. So we're moving on to some other objectives and goals. And we've been talking about these things. And I think that this is really setting the course for the next 12 months for what I'm interested in doing with information technologies, and especially with building management. Probably a lot of this is more specific to building management. So we have been in discussion with Madam Chairman and Chairman of Administration Caius about where we go with the building assessment and the facility plan and the future of the county buildings. And we're going to be looking at what we have currently with architects and engineers, but also potentially like a request for qualifications or a proposal for what a facility master plan would look like based on the information that we've been collecting over the last 9 months. That is something that I'm working on a narrative for the county board and for Madam Chairman to have as a way to explain what that would consist of. So we'll have that in the next few weeks. We'll have kind of the narrative of what the facility master plan should entail. It is it can be a very extensive process, but I think the discussions that we've had can narrow the conversation to some specific issues. But then there's also the long-term planning of where do you see the county going 10, 20 years from now, or even longer. So there's a lot to be discussed in that, but it is going to start up very soon. So the other things that we've been working on is the project services and methodologies for the capital program. You're going to see kind of the full five step program for what we are using with basically Project Management Institute methodology, kind of customized for what we do in county government. The other thing that we're going to start focusing on is performance measures for our services and requests. So we're going to try and get some standard reports that indicate how many tickets, how many requests have we had, what buildings are they being had, and what types of requests are they. Henry Thompson in the buildings department, they put in the facilities management software for the tickets and services. They're gaining and ground and building up data of requests every day. So we should get a better view of what we're being asked to do. The other thing they're including in there is preventative maintenance, all the major mechanicals, getting preventative maintenance in there. We can report on the progress of performing the preventative maintenance. We want to use that as a measurement. Other things that we're going to talk about, and I've had a couple board members ask me about this, and also elected officials, department heads, is a review of janitorial and custodial operations, what we do for cleaning the buildings, contractors, staff. It's kind of mostly contractual, but we have a mix of staff, and we have some good things and some bad things and some things in between. But doing a comparison and review of that has been discussed. Also looking at safety and safety training. That's something that Henry Thompson, Charles, and I have talked about, making sure that our employees, if we're asking them to work with mechanical systems or with heavy operating machinery or other things, even air quality, air sensors, that we look at safety when we're doing that, not just physically replacing devices. So safety is going to be something that we're going to try to focus our energy on this year. The next item is energy efficiency. That came up yesterday. We were talking about the electrical utility rates. I have a little bit of a preview of that in here, so you can kind of get an idea of what that looked like. But I don't think anybody disagrees that if we can do something with more energy efficiency, it's good. And we work with the energy and environment, Jody Womack and her team, to make sure that we're trying to evaluate more energy efficient appliances and motors and devices. So last is making sure that when we do things, we're always trying to measure our progress and reevaluate things and come up with strategies, objectives, and goals that we can actually measure and achieve, and try to progress, make progress on. So we're going to continue to do that. And I think the last one is the most important. I think our team has been doing great, is trying to always focus on being responsive and customer friendly, always being able to be available by email or by phone. And when someone calls, getting back to them. So I think those are our objectives and goals right now. If you don't have any questions about those, there's a lot of activities going on. This is just a list of them. I don't want to go through all of the activities. They're in your packet. We are working on the capital program development. And what that is the 5-year capital program and the building assessment had $25 million worth of building investment that we need to make. And we had discussed a 5-year plan where we tried to go through that incrementally at $5 million a year. We're trying to identify and get the initiation process started for that first year capital program. So we're spending a lot of time on development of the capital plan to initiate projects. And that also flows into the project management part of it, how we're going to present that to the board. And you're going to see what that looks like in a minute here. I know they've been doing a lot with the facility services help desk or service desk and getting the preventative maintenance schedules into the system. And then we have some ongoing capital projects as well that the departments are working on. So those are kind of the highlights of what we have moving forward. I know some of you heard in the last meeting that county board, there was the update about the evidence.com and Axon and the contract for the state's attorney. We will be working with them on that. I just want to reassure you that that project is software as a service. It's not a lot of heavy lifting by the IT department. So there's a company providing the service and they're just going to simply get the accounts set up and they log in and they do all the training, they maintain it. And in fact, we were talking yesterday, it might actually help us. We have some evidence that we deal with litigation holds and retention. And we're going to talk with them about storing it in that system instead of having us store it. So that was a good discussion, actually. So if you have questions about activities, I'd be happy to try and answer any of those as well. Other activities, these are things that we are learning about in kind of short order. Again, the master planning process, we've been talking about that this week. And we're looking at, what would that look like in terms of a request for qualifications or proposals so that we could have a group of people interview the prospective planners that would help us, or, what we can get from our current architects as well. But that's something that's kind of becoming a priority. We need to get moving to understand what we do with all this information for planning. I think the last time they did a master plan for facilities was 2014. So it's sorely in need of updating. And I think it's important before we take any substantial actions to have that. The sheriff's office, they've notified us that they are working on a sheriff's substation with the Fox Valley Park District. They were trying to get it on this agenda for here. They're working on the agreement. I don't know if it'll come to fruition and they'll have it for JPS. I think it'll probably be too soon or I guess too late for them to get it on JPS, Judicial Public Safety. But Sheriff Hain wanted me to let admin know, because we deal with buildings and grounds, that they are pursuing a lease of an office space for a substation. It's a small amount of money too. I think it's somewhere in the $5,000 range a year. So, but he did want me to let you know that. Lastly, we do have some changes and things going on with the Mill Creek SSA. Drew Fraz, who's no longer with the board, used to help facilitate that. And we're looking at the appointment process and overall how the advisory board for the SSA works. I've been in touch with the state's attorney's office. Also talked with Madam Chair, who does the appointments, about joining me for a meeting with the SSA. I'm not sure if the state's attorney's office is going to make the January 23rd meeting, but we are meeting January 23rd at 6:30 out at the Mill Creek SSA office. And it is the advisory board for the finances of the special service area. So those are some of the other activities that we have going on. So before we go any further, those are kind of like our project areas and program areas that are going on. We do have Jason here. Jason has a short presentation from White and Company. I wanted to invite him up to the microphone to speak about the projects White's working on. But if you have any other questions about our building management activities, I could answer those now, or we could go straight to Jason.
Right now, it'd be fine if you have anything before it gets too far back and we forget where we're at there. Madam Chair?
I do. Could we possibly get a copy? Get a copy of the 2014 master plan?
Absolutely.
And if I, certainly I can get a copy, Mr. Khan should have a copy. And if any of the board members on this committee would like to have a copy, we've got two over there.
Yeah.
So perhaps just send the link.
It is out on the website, but it's probably buried behind history of, the last 8 years. So
Mhm.
I'll get a copy and get it out. Absolutely.
I appreciate it. Thank
Yeah,
you.
bring it to the surface where we can find it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
It should be, you could search it with the search box, but.
Yep.
Mr. Linder, do you have a question?
No, I was just gonna say, just email the link.
Yeah, okay, absolutely.
Okay, any other questions before we move along? Alrighty,
Yes, please. Good morning, everyone. Jason Dwyer with White and Company. I just wanted to give you a couple quick status updates on some ongoing projects. I'm happy to report today that we have a couple projects that were ongoing that have been completed. Just figured I'd show you a couple pictures of some of the completed work. So let me start out with first the boiler replacement project at the Judicial Center. I think many know that there was a need to replace the boilers there. There were 4 existing air-cooled boilers that were in poor condition at the facility, and they've been replaced with 3 new Fulton Endura Plus boilers. So a total capacity of about 9 million BTUs for heating capacity for the building. And through this project, we were actually able to make a couple other upgrades to the system too. So refine some of the exhaust venting for those boilers, and then did a direct ducted air intake for them. Previously, the boilers were pulling the combustion air from the room, and we had to do some reheat. And so this is just a little more efficient system. So you should realize a little bit of energy efficiency on this. And then you're not running into a situation like you had with the last ones where it's just pulling air that's in the room that could, have other contaminants and so forth. So able to get rid of some old equipment, clean the space up a little bit. So on the left, there's just a couple pictures there of the Endura boilers. I put substantially complete. We've done some punch lists, just some fine tuning that needs to be done to get everything completely dialed in. But I'm happy to report this project's basically done and completed just a little bit under budget. So that's always a good sign. So that was the first one. And then the next project we had going on that was kind of a rush project as well was a new courtroom 001 at the Judicial Center for orders of protection. So if those of you that were on the committee when this was approved, this was originally the multipurpose room at the Judicial Center, which was used for a variety of activities. But the courtroom right next to it, 005, was kind of doing double duty and really needed to be converted to a full-time dedicated in-person detention hearing courtroom as part of the requirements of Safety Act and so forth. So there was a need to create an additional courtroom space to handle the orders of protection. So this was a project that kind of came about pretty quickly last year, and we had to pull together some plan sets and procurement and so forth to make sure we got the project completed by the end of the year. And I'm happy to report that we did get it completed so that it could open beginning of January with court activities there. So a couple other quick things on this project. We designed the space to allow for grand jury proceedings as well. So there's been some discussion about, just the overall space crunch in the Judicial Center and trying to think ahead a little bit about how grand jury proceedings could be handled in this space to free up some area up on the 3rd floor in the state's attorney's area. So, because that building is so tight on space, we're just always looking for opportunities to have spaces be, as I call them, hardworking spaces, serve multiple purposes. So Chief Judge has been working closely with the state's attorney to make sure that works. The space is designed to handle that. You'll see on the screen, there's a couple monitors in there. The other thing that we've done is outfitted the courtroom with a lot of new modern technology so you can handle video conferencing, remote participation, a whole bunch of different activities in there, which I think is also something the judiciary is interested in looking at more holistically throughout the judicial center. So there was an initial pilot done at the Juvenile Justice Center, and we've continued to focus on that with this courtroom. So just a couple quick pictures. Looking at the bench on the left side there, the gallery seating area kind of on the right side, looking back toward the main entry. We were also able to create a couple office and conferencing spaces at the lead into that room. And then what you don't see in the picture off on the side in a private corridor, consolidated some storage space. So the multipurpose room was a little larger than necessary for the courtroom. We were able to take advantage of all that space to create a number of different areas and solve some additional needs for the judiciary. Again, this project completed on time, before the end of the year, so they could operate in the beginning of January here, and under budget as well. There's a couple lead time things we had issues with doors and some microchip components that are, problem everywhere, cars, electronics equipments, all that. So there's a couple things we'll still have to kind of tie up loose ends. So again, I'm calling the project substantially complete. It's usable, functional, but we'll have to come back and refine a couple things yet once that equipment comes in. And then I just wanted to actually, this is a project I think that was talked about last year too, and I think presented at the executive committee for approval by the judiciary. And I just was going to do a quick recap on status of where we are on this. This is renovation of the Orders of Protection Office 149 at the Judicial Center, as well as creating a new court reporters control room space. So this plan we're looking at right here is first floor. So as you come in right at the entry space, I guess for those that can see the screen, this is the main entry area here, security queuing and security screening area. Then you come around the end, and this is where somebody who needs to file for an order of protection would work with judicial staff to make that happen. The old arrangement was not working well in terms of operational flow and privacy. And so the judiciary has asked us to kind of rework that space. So this is just a quick concept plan. We're refining the waiting area a little bit more privacy here for folks that are working directly with judicial staff, and then creating a check-in operation there just to sort of enhance the operational flow. So that's, and then just a little vignette image of what that is going to look like when it's done. The other part of the project, this is the lower level of the Judicial Center. The green area is really the cafeteria space. We're looking to renovate a portion of this just up from the children's waiting area or children's area. Got a zoomed in plan here. Picture on the right kind of shows the area we're looking to do some renovation in or really build out. And then in the pinkish color, we've got a court reporter's control room and supervisor's office, and then conferencing space next to it. I did actually talk to Andrea O'Brien this morning. I think they may look at creating more office space. It seems to be just a continuation of a need for more and more office space at that building. So this, what we thought was going to be a conferencing space, may actually house a couple more staff. So we're in the middle of design on this right now, trying to get everything fine-tuned. But basically what this allows for is right now, all of the court reporters are live in the courtroom. And the trend really in most modern jurisdictions is to have the capability to do electronic court recordation. So clerks and court reporters will need to actually be in a control room, and they monitor the proceedings remotely. So technology gets implemented. A lot of that happens through the state. So I know the judiciary is working with the state to get that technology in the courtrooms, but this is the control room space for the court reporters to manage those activities once that all gets implemented. What we're looking at for schedule on this right now, we have a couple design items to fine tune with the judiciary, keep reconfirming that we're on track with the budget that was approved for the project, desire to get this out to bid in the early to mid-February timeframe, anticipating about a month to work through a bid process and get trade contractors on board for the project. And then we'll probably have a pause period where we work on procurement. We don't want to start construction activities until all the materials are available, because we don't want to disrupt operations in the court facility any longer than we have to. Right now, we're targeting to be able to have all the procurement of materials done by June. with construction happening starting in June, proceeding into approximately mid-August. We'll continue to refine that schedule as we get closer to those dates. Chief Judge has a desire to have the space completed by September 1, and we're hoping to get it done sooner than that. So those were kind of the main updates today. We also, I think, as you know, we're working on the Fabian Parkway demolition. We had to get approvals that I've received now for additional, there was environmental out there at the building. So we've got additional documentation that'll be included with the bidding. Planning to get that out to bid. And then we have to work with purchasing on the bid timeline right now, based on the time I think it'll take to get everything set with that and get bids in and reviewed and a recommendation. We're anticipating bringing a recommendation to award a trade contract or construction contract on that to the committee here in March. And then it works through the committee process and as soon as it gets approved fully by the board, the contractor will be able to engage the demo activities out there. So those were the quick updates I had. I'm happy to take any questions if you have any.
Okay, great. Kudos to both White Company and you, Jason, and our new director for getting those two projects, especially 1 and 2, the boiler replacement, which is critical since we had the failure of the old boilers, which came in cheaper than the old ones, right? The new ones came in cheaper and on time.
Yep.
Before it got cold, and also the courtroom, which was due January 1st, and dang it, there it is.
Was right down to the wire, but it
Right
was
down
complete.
there. So thanks for your cooperation and all you did on that. And along with the office remodeling, and these are all projects that are in our streamline or our stream of construction for capital projects. So for the new people, this is something that Roger in particular has tightened this up so that we're able to follow these in their very good chronological order, following good building practices and building management. Any questions for Jason? I know that's a lot of information. I think those are available for touring too, if you,
We could set that
if,
up.
yeah, if you're, it's pretty fantastic looking facility, the stuff they're doing over there. So look very nice in there. Now working, very functional. So
Great.
thank you. Thanks you for being here. Oh, Madam Chair?
Thank you. Sometimes, there's so much information. I just want to think about what has been presented before question is asked.
That was a lot.
We talked with Roger yesterday regarding the need for technology, increased technology in the courtrooms. Can you dive down just slightly into that so that we're all aware of what that's going to entail?
So this is Roger from an IT perspective, I guess. The IT component of the new courtroom spaces involves the Zoom technology, web conferencing, video conferencing, digital evidence, presentation capabilities. A lot of the attorneys are using software and they're using presentation materials in the courtroom that are really require you to have the video displays and switch equipment to switch video from one source to another and from one screen to another to have it for the jury, for the witness, for the judge, for the attorneys. There's a lot of switched electronics that have to be installed in the room. So in this particular courtroom and actually in the juvenile justice courtroom, all of that technology was built into the project. I see Jarrett Sanchez online. So one of the other components that we have been working towards with ARP funding was to try and continue that with other courtrooms. And there was a request for doing more conversion of courtrooms to digital. During the pandemic, the COVID period, we did a lot of implementation of video technology and microphones and audiovisual stuff to make the courtrooms work, but long-term to make it more permanent, more manageable. This is something that's really critical for them to continue operating in the kind of remote and where the public can attend court remotely or not be physically in the courtroom. And I think it's the way of the future for the courts. It's tremendously efficient, effective. We've had, I think I would say the scheduling of court cases and rescheduling. I think that's been improved because people can attend court without, having to leave work or travel. Attorneys can attend without leaving their office. So there's a lot of benefits. They still have opportunities to do in person in the courtroom. And that's always probably going to be an option, but I think the preference is that if they can do it remotely, they'd like to do that. So that's one of the things that we see being discussed this year is can we potentially extend that to other courtrooms? And I think, I don't know, Jason, if you have kind of a rough number, it was somewhere, depending on how much work you have to do to prepare a courtroom, it's like between 70 is a broad range, $75,000 to $150,000 worth of electronics per courtroom to do that. And it depends on kind of what the courtroom starts with. Do they have electric? Do they have the data in the right places? And then you go from there, but.
Yeah, that's accurate. I think Roger touched on a couple things, really enhanced capability for remote or hybrid participation with the Zoom capabilities, but the other part is the evidence presentation. So being able to get connectivity at attorney tables to allow for that. And I think, not to speak for the chief judge, but we've had conversations about this through the planning process. And, he's very supportive of a robust use of technology in the courts to make the process as efficient as possible. And I think, we're going to continue to see changes in terms of how courtrooms look in the future. So, as part of master planning and thinking about the future of the judicial center and growth there, I think getting that technology in the existing courtrooms, but also thinking about how courtrooms can look a little bit differently. They don't always have to have all the gallery seating as they do now. I mean, there's opportunities for different types and different sizes of courtrooms. And I know that the chief judge has been very responsive and supportive of that kind of consideration. So that combined with the fact that the judiciary is working with the state right now to get the digital recordation and all that in, I think really starts to bring the judicial center into a really nice modern era and allows for more efficient operation there.
May I ask another question?
Sure.
We've just allocated and approved little over $2 million for evidence-based software. And the Safety Act has been delayed until March by the Supreme Court decision, but it's going to be implemented in some format. I think they've mostly pulled back because of the interest in cash bail. But that evidence-based software is going to continue. So with that in mind, and let's say it's going to be fully launched maybe in April, maybe in May, pending sometime early this year. Do we have the software and the ability right now in the courts to implement that? Or is this something that we need to hopefully put on the fast track? And notice I said hopefully, so that it can be put in.
Mr. Chairman, I would, this is Roger again, I would say that the sooner we have the, more sophisticated or more permanent solution in place would be better. There are ways that they do it now in the courtroom. And when I say that, it could be a matter of bringing in TVs and monitors and hooking them up for the purpose of a trial or for the purpose of presentation of evidence. This would actually put the equipment in the room. It's there, it's ready to go. And they can use it. The other thing is getting the attorneys trained and used to using the new equipment in the room. I think that's another learning curve for them. But right now they do have ways of displaying and presenting the information in court. Probably the biggest advantage that this new software will give them is the exchange of evidence, videos, and other forms of evidence, pictures, in a secure platform, and it allows them to distribute it and share it with other agencies and other attorneys. And that's something that we had been doing and working with the attorneys on in kind of I would describe it as using the tools that we have. And this is really specific to make that process work better. So if you have a video that comes in from a gas station and it's an encoded video and you only need 2 minutes of it, versus the hour that they gave you. This allows you to annotate, redact, cut it down to size, get it ready, and put it into evidence and share it. And I mean, it does it all in the software. So we're not pulling it off of some drive that, that we don't know who provided it necessarily, the attorneys do, and then trying to help them convert it and get, some annotation software. It's all built into the evidence system. So I think those efficiencies, we won't necessarily see them, but the attorneys will.
And what is the, how long will it take to get the equipment?
So this is software as a service. It's
No,
on-
the software I'm talking about.
It's web-based, it's fast.
The
as
monitors, the equipment that we're
Oh.
looking for funding to implement.
For this, I think you probably have a lead time. I think last time it was somewhere in the 4 to 6 months, of lead time. If you order the equipment, depending on what's available, we made some substitutions when we ordered the equipment for the courts because we couldn't get certain products. And I know that was a challenge, but I would say that if you're trying to get it done in a short order, the sooner we understand the funding and the sooner we get the procurement process in place, we could get lead times.
So we're looking, Jason,
Yeah, I could just piggyback on that. Roger's right. I think in terms of most of the equipment, monitors and a lot of the basic components are not too long of a lead time. The one issue that we're seeing a really long lead time and it still hasn't improved much is Crestron controllers, specialty controller devices that are, to operate the system. What we ended up doing with the Orders of Protection courtroom is we used just sort of I'll call it a generic, non-specific, manufacturer-specific controller, and then applied a software overlay on that so that it still looks and feels like the same type of operation. But it kind of goes back to things like security components. We're having trouble getting microchips for security, door operators and all that. So there are a number of those components that do have a long lead time to where, if the project was approved and you could get those on order, it just positions you a little bit better to do the implementation down the road.
do you have all the information to move forward on that so that we can start planning? Because obviously we're going to need it.
I think we would, if we were going to do it now, we would initiate it as a capital project and we would talk with the ARP committee about the funding. Obviously, we don't want to do a bunch of work and come up short and find out that ARP and the Ernst & Young folks don't find this to be a suitable project, or for some reason, it's not something that could be supported by ARP. We'd have to somehow find, it's not going to be inexpensive. It's over $1 million worth of work. So I think we would just want to make sure that the funding is in line and supported before we do too much work to get started.
And we're still talking about the permanent electronics in the,
Yes.
for the
Yeah.
data transfer.
Right now, we use some cameras that kind of are multi-purpose types of things. This would put fixed cameras in that, manage the video while they're holding court. And it also puts in fixed microphones and a little better quality, a lot better quality in most cases.
We're still really early in this process. It hasn't
Yes.
even hit the capital projects.
No, we have not addressed it in
Okay.
capital. It was something that I believe the courts put into ARP over a year ago.
So for us in this committee, though, we have a process that this would go through to, you have the
Yes.
funding, then we provide the
Yeah.
information, and we want to make sure we have it all planned out before we jump in and
If
get
that's
cut off.
the will of the committee, we would present a business case for the project, and the last piece of that business case would be the funding source.
okay, so,
I think that would be a fabulous idea.
well,
We're going to need it. Obviously it's,
We can talk with ARP committee and ask them where they feel this fits.
if we don't have funding, we'll have a problem to start with, but if a consensus from those members that are on the committee here, that this sounds like a reasonable thing to do, then we can at least moving it toward that, Mr. Davis and.
wonderful. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jason. And thank you.
I think
Like I said,
Mr.
more
Sanchez
IT.
left-
What's that?
Mr. Sanchez left the meeting. No,
Oh,
it's fine.
well,
That's fine.
maybe back there. I think he's in the
Yeah.
back there. He maybe,
Money. He's counting out the money now.
he just went out to shake the money out of the ARP committee. Maybe. Oh, well. Okay. Then were you,
We're going to finish the report. Blair, if you go
continue with the
back-
report? Yeah,
Yeah, the report, I had some updates on the electricity that we worked on.
right.
So
There we go.
we had done a resolution authorizing a broker agent to negotiate electric rates for the county, and this is something that happens periodically. Last time we did it was in 2020. And what happens is the broker goes out to all of the different energy providers and will get us competitive pricing for the energy. The delivery component is something that's generally provided by the company that supplying the energy, but we buy the energy itself at competitive market prices, and it fluctuates significantly, and it fluctuates daily during the day. And what you'll find is that they want you to basically get an advanced authorization and sign the contract literally the same day that they issue the pricing, because the pricing will change the next day. So we had resolution 22-461 authorize us to use Vanguard Energy as a broker. And then authorize the Madam Chair to sign the agreements upon, getting the most responsible pricing and terms. So we put together a review team, which was building management, energy and environment, which is Jody Wolnick, myself, purchasing, Karen Keitzman, the purchasing director. And then we had assistance from the state's attorney's office to review the proposals from the broker. We did this over a period of about 2 weeks. I will tell you that during the 2 weeks, we had a snowstorm, a major snowstorm right before Christmas. The prices were almost a third higher than what we ended up ultimately getting. We deferred and waited till after the storm subsided and the rates came down. And I'll show you a chart in a second here of what those rates look like. Our 2020 contract price for the term was 2.4 cents per kilowatt hour. So 0.0242 per kilowatt hour. And we were looking at 2 contracts for the Judicial Center and all of our other accounts. The Judicial Center has the solar field, and we know that it's going to come online, I think April, May timeframe. I'm not exact on that. And we know that the contract that we would want to have at that time will be different. So we asked for a 5-month contract for the Judicial Center where the solar field will be injected. And then we also asked for a 23-month contract for the rest of the accounts. And you can see the rates that came back. The rate of 0.04310 was for the Judicial Center, and that's a large account. That's one of the larger bills that we get. To give you kind of the order of magnitude, the bill for that Judicial Center account sometimes is around $30,000 per invoice. So this also includes all the other smaller accounts. If you notice, the 23-month smaller accounts is a little bit more than the large account, and that's just strictly volume and the length of the term. But those are the rates. I put the percent increase up there just for an example. And you can see that it increased substantially. So below that, you'll see what our budget was for 2022 is $975,000 in 2022. And I can tell you that was actual. In 2021, it was 1.17 million. So if you do the math and you extend it, plus the increases for City of Geneva and City of St. Charles electricity, we asked for 2.17 million for this year based on knowing that it was going to go up maybe double what we had before. We still haven't gotten the pricing from Geneva and St. Charles back. It was in the newspaper yesterday that they're talking about increasing their rates and for all utilities. So I'm expecting there to be, similar types of changes. The good silver lining is that we should have the solar field online sometime early summer, and that should lower some of our bills. And then we've also been talking about LED lighting and some energy efficiencies that we might be able to incorporate into the capital replacement and capital plans. A good example, the boilers that we installed, they're, I think, 98+% efficient. They're highly efficient boilers. So as we go through and replace different mechanical systems, working with energy and environment to get the most efficient system we can get for our money. And then also some of the things with switching to LED lights and maybe some other types of energy saving or cost-effective programs that we can undertake. But that's the rates that we had. So the neat part is this chart. So this was provided by Vanguard. And you can see on the left-hand side where we started out in 2020. And we were at the 0.02, 4. That was when we issued our last contract. And then you can see what happened from last year. And you can see the rates. I mean, the green line at the top, the dotted green line is the high where it was at over 8 cents per kilowatt hour. And right now we're a little bit more than half of what that was at peak. So, I will say between the Friday that we first showed it to Madam Chair and the Monday, because she asked to have time to, understand the contract better and review it, it actually went down while you were reading it. So it was a good thing. While you read the paperwork, it went down.
It was a good guess then.
Yeah. So that's where we're at with the electric rates right now. Now, another thing that we've been talking with Constellation and Vanguard about is if the market continues to go down, we will be looking at potentially asking for another contract. So what would happen would be we'd have to extend the terms to include another 24 months or 20, maybe more months to get a new term, but that volume in the new term at a lower rate. So we're watching that. We've been in contact with Vanguard, just kind of keep us updated and give us the pulse of the electric market. There's some long-term numbers that he showed us that didn't indicate it was going to drop substantially. So I have a chart for that too, but I didn't put it in here. So these are the rates. I put this in there so you can kind of get an idea of what they show us. So this was the table that they showed us for the small accounts 23-month agreement. And this was on January 4th. This was the week before you signed them. We were at 0.0 for 23 month, we were at 0.050. And that was for the 23 month, which it ended up being 0.048 ultimately. And then on the right side is the Judicial Center agreement, which ended up being 0.044 with Constellation. And in this one, it was 0.058 for the Constellation. So between the 4th and the following Monday, Tuesday, it changed by a few pennies per kilowatt hour. So, I think the broker process, the agent process, it works. We did get good pricing. It's, it isn't a great story to tell because the energy prices are double almost. If there's any consolation, everybody's paying more. So that's what we got out of the electric contracts. Anybody have any questions about the electric rates or the agreements? The agreements are signed and executed, so we have those.
Okay, and we'll have a final, you said you have a final number now? That was the final number?
The final number
Or we would
was
have it?
the 0.0, this number right here.
Okay,
Yeah, so the 5 month was 0.0431 and the 23 month was 0.04806.
Okay.
Per kilowatt hour. And again, that does not take into account Geneva, St. Charles contracts. They're a municipal utility. The other thing that doesn't take into account is the delivery charges. So the delivery charges are not the energy, it's what the company spends to get it to us. And some of those changed. They were more modest. They weren't as much as the energy increases.
double?
They weren't double. No.
Lucky us. Okay, any other questions for Roger on that item? Then
Okay.
proceed.
Now we're going to get into capital projects. This is something that I shared last month, and it was more about initiating, planning, and execution. And we've been working on how are we going to present methodology for managing projects for a project services group. And so we've extended that to basically 5 traditional steps of project management. This is not something that we created. It's based on Project Management Institute's methodology. But what we did is we extracted the pieces of what government does and did not jump into areas for things that private sector would do or others. So this is really specific to government project management, and it takes you through the steps that we need to execute in order to successfully do a project. And on the initiation side, think of that as, what is my business case, my schedule, and the timing of it and the cost, and where does the money come from? And then ultimately, from this committee's perspective, why are we doing this? Is it mandated? Is it a safety issue? Somebody just want this? But the business case needs to spell that out. And you need to determine whether that business case is something that you want to take up as a capital project and establish a budget for it. And that's what we're going to show you in a minute, kind of the budget that we've done initiation on. The next part, planning, really goes into the building a plan set, a requirements document, getting all of that information in place so that we can accurately follow the procurement code for the state and the county. Once we get into that, we're going to get a bid or a quotation process. It could be an intergovernmental agreement. It could be a joint purchasing agreement with a known, national contract. But ultimately, you're establishing the work that's to be done, the schedule, and the cost. Once you get to that point, you go into execution, which is getting a contract, and you actually begin facilitating the work and scheduling. I think the three factors that we try to focus on in IT and what we're going to be working with building management on is, what is the work breakdown, what work is being done, the schedule for the work, the time that it takes. Every project should have a start and an end. It shouldn't go on for an eternity. And then the costs, how much is the project budgeted for and how much are we spending? The next part, which is monitor and control, I think is probably the part that is maybe introduces change and has some of the hazards of dealing with large capital projects. And that's the change order process and communicating that. So we've been working under some pretty specific change order processes to control who can make a change to the schedule, who can change the cost, who can change the material or the workmanship of a project. And we'll have a specific change order process and form. Ultimately, there's other things besides schedule and cost and doing what was in the statement of work. There's things like quality. And one of the things that Charles and I have worked on for years is you can do everything in the statement of work. You can do it on time and under budget. And if it doesn't do what the customer wants, it doesn't matter. So quality is paramount. You have to make sure that you're talking with them and getting feedback to understand that what you're doing is still relevant or works for them. The last part is something that we've been working on is closing, and that's substantial completion, punch lists, open items, warranty items, getting all the documentation, establishing a maintenance plan for the products or the services ongoing. How do you get it into your ongoing costs and budget? Close the project. And we were talking about it outside before this. Closing the project is also going to involve a final report to committee. So that we've gone through all the different processes that we need to close it. But this is what we're working on. We've actually, I've been shopping around trying to find products that'll do kind of the limited government view of portfolio management. We're at the point where we're going to probably make our own, and we're going to use a content management solution and workflow and forms to do it. We think it might be easier to do that and track what we want, as opposed to some of the more corporate, commercial, private sector tools involve a lot more detail. So we find ourselves having to turn things off that we would never use. So anyway, we're looking at that. The goal is to have this up and running, and you'd be able to see the supporting documentation and the progress through the project as we go through this, the ownership, the contact information, documentation that went with the project, ultimately kind of culminating into what would be a dashboard view so that everyone in the county, especially offices and departments, but also I think the public could see what we're doing with capital projects. So that's where we're at with the project management scope that we've been developing. this is where we left off with last year's capital projects. And this is simply the list of projects that have been initiated. So this started with a list that was originally in the budget process. And then as that was initiated or amended during the year, this became the list. Now it doesn't show the actuals or the expenditures that have been paid against it. This is just the budgeted expenses. The actual number of expenditures was not 6.5 million. We ended the year with many projects not being finished, and there is going to be a actual number, which is the budget less year to date, and there'll be a request for a budget adjustment to roll those projects into 2023. We're working on that right now to figure out where we left off with all of our pay applications, all of our invoices, everything effective November, the end of November, beginning December 1, we have to have a cutoff and separate so that we can rightly divide which fiscal year it occurred in. Whatever is not complete, we'll be asking finance to work with us for the budget adjustment to roll it into 2023 so that we can complete the projects. Just to note, a couple of these in there, they are substantially done. There's probably retainage and maybe last invoices. Big one in there is the JC courtroom renovation that Jason Dwyer was talking about. Also the judicial center boiler replacement. I think both of those are substantially done, and we're probably got the last retainage invoice for those. And a couple of the other ones in there, even the smaller ones, we've done substantial completion. So we're going to be finalizing that. Hopefully we'll have it in February. If not, it'll come to the March committee where we do the rollover. But we'll be starting the initiating capital projects for 2023. That's going to begin with the capital projects identified in the 5-year capital assessment or the assessment plan that was done. So these were building areas where we had projects and dollars assigned in the 5-year capital. So if you look at this is 5 years with equal distribution each year. And it kind of divides it up into building areas. We did it this way because we were already in the process of submitting the budget, and we hadn't itemized like the actual initiation of projects. So you're going to see us come back with somewhere in the neighborhood of $3 to $4 million in capital initiation projects that we think are the highest priorities out of the, I think there's 20 some pages of projects that were listed in the assessment. And we're going to be picking the ones that we think are the most critical, most important, highest value. And we'll share kind of our primary list, and we'll have a kind of a secondary list of projects that we would pick up should we get, beyond the initial ones. But it's going to be based on this 5-year plan. And this year you had 4.9 million in that plan. And I'm going to say that we probably have $3 million of projects from 2022 that are going to roll forward. So by next month, I believe we'll have the initiation and the rollover balances for somewhere in the neighborhood of $7 million in capital. It should be programmatically starting for us. One of the challenges that we talked about with architects and engineers is that the lead time to do a project and to get it out publicly bid to do all of that is months. So we're always in this bind where we don't know if the board is going to approve of our capital budget and at what dollar until the second half of the year, sometimes later in the year. We may not know that the money is actually authorized. This year, I think the budget was finally passed around, November. So we can start some of the initiation and process, but one of the questions will be kind of our confidence interval for whether or not the capital plan will be, able to sustain $5 million a year, or do we only plan, maybe a smaller amount, and if the remainder of the budget comes through, we start planning the other part when it gets approved. We have to figure out what that, math looks like, I guess. And that's something that we're going to work on. We're going to try and get it to where we understand, what the fund balance is for capital, where we're at in the year, and if we can start some of the projects earlier to get the initiation and planning done so that we could start construction in the spring. We got to get our schedule a little bit more advanced than where it is right now. Right now, I hate to use the word, but you feel like you're reacting to something, and we don't want to be doing that. We want to get our planning and bids and pricing and start the work when the budget is there. But right now, we're in the second month already of the fiscal year. So if I said a capital project takes 3 years to get to execution, it takes a month of initiation, a month of planning, maybe 2, and then you sign the awarded contract and get started with it. And it takes, months to get it done. I mean, it could easily be, you're constantly rolling forward. And that has been the case for a long time. That's something that we're going to be working on, trying to get our schedule annually down to a cycle, make it a little bit more common.
I have a comment.
Yeah,
on that.
I'm going to make one comment, but this at least gives us, and this program over a spread over 5 years gives us a target that we're looking at, that we're looking to get to that ideal. Is that correct?
Yes, and if you'd like, I can send out the copy of the larger assessment. I think we sent it to the last committee, but I don't think this committee has had that yet.
Be a good idea. Great. Okay, I'm sorry, Madam Chairman.
Oh,
You
oh,
have
that's,
comment?
that's fine. This would be, I think for this whole entire committee, and also for advocating when we get towards the budget review. If my understanding of what you just said, Roger, is that we are behind, so that for next year's budget, we should be allocating the $5 million, which we've already talked about 555 for the next 5 years. However, we should include actually another 5 million, because it's 5 million for this year. You need an additional $5 million allocated so you could start planning for the work, or whatever, at least some of that money, the work to get it started then 23 in 25.
I would say right now, we're working with Joe Onzek in finance to determine what the fund balance is and what he sees as kind of the availability of funding. We don't have like a fixed number. It's not something that's really, I guess the fund balance is guaranteed because it's not going anywhere. It's in capital. But if it's, say the fund balance is $3 million and we know we're programming 4 million, well, Joe would get the other, $2 million for our capital funds from end of year, money that was returned
Mhm.
from the end of the year. We usually apply that to one-time capital costs, or it's any revenue that you have available over your expenses, which is not the case this year. So I think that's the concern, is you get started with, 5-year planning capital, and there's going to be economic circumstances that you have to deal with. So we just need to be forecasting the capital budget so we can get these guys planning earlier.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Because otherwise we're always going to be behind.
we're always rolling behind,
Yeah.
waiting.
Catch up.
You're working on 22's plans for implementation in 23.
Actually, the bigger challenge is that other things come up that break or fail while you're doing it.
Boilers.
Mhm.
So
Okay. Any questions or any
So
clarification
perhaps-
needed on that?
When we go forward, as we start really talking about budget management, if we can put that in the back of your minds
Yep.
to make sure that we start
Absolutely.
looking forward
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah.
That'd be very helpful.
That's the plan, is to have this available so that we can insert that. Yeah. And then next,
Mr. Chair,
oh, I'm sorry, there's someone online?
Tepe here.
Oh, Mr. Tepe, yeah, I see your hands up. I'm sorry. I didn't see it.
Thank you. Roger, just a couple of questions. One, on your list, I don't see anything there that relates to the health department building. Have you addressed the issues that relate to the health department in this planning process?
in this particular process, we were looking at what buildings we know are long-term assets. And at that time, when this was looked at, we do have a list of things that the building was assessed. And then the question was whether or not that's a long-term asset for the county to reinvest in. And that's a question for the
choice.
committee. And it's also, you'll notice that the county government center here was also another question about it, whether it's a long-term asset for the county, because there's been discussion about whether the facility master plan moves, the government center to another location, to a new location. So that's something that we're going to be evaluating. At the time when this assessment was done, we did look at what was needed for these buildings, but we are not programmatically planning improvements and upgrades to these particular buildings, because at the time we were told that these may not be long-term assets. If they are, and that's a part of our facility plan, we need to also start looking at what improvements can be done to these buildings and at what price. I think if you look at that and you want to come up with a facility plan for this campus that upgrades it to a modern campus that's full amenity, fully accessible, great, usability and public access, it is a significant investment. That money will not touch it.
Yeah, I understand. And,
Another question for another time, yeah.
Yes.
But the,
and
it's something we'll have to address.
and in addition to that, is this addressing any new space requirements?
No,
No growth.
There you go, Mr. Chair.
Hey. Are you on our, oh yeah, you are at the end of the committee there. We're expecting your input then, Mr. Tappy. Help us out with this. All right.
I would say a lot of this is going towards major mechanical systems, roofs, envelope issues, things that we have to take care of to maintain the asset.
Once we consider that we're going to have it,
Right.
to keep it. All right. Any other questions? And proceed with the,
Sure. So the last part of this is just the financials. I'm not going to get into any specific details about this. We're at 8.3% 1 month and generally looking good. There are some things that we pre-purchase like paper and supplies and commodities. And I know there's some equipment that was purchased and some other things that were bought for supplies to build out like shop tools and equipment and different parts and tools that the building management wanted to get so that their people are equipped to do maintenance work. And I think that might address some of the Granger questions, but I know that's probably one of the only areas where we have an expenditure that was kind of prepaid, bought early so that our staff can actually go out and do work. The rest of the items on this list are relatively in line. I don't think there's any exceptions beyond the 8%. The only other thing I was going to mention is this is actually what the capital budget looks like in the finance system. And this is actually combined both IT and building management. And it gives you an idea of how much money is involved between the two areas. And in this one, you'll see that the budget less year to date is 9.554 million. And that's everything that we do between building management and the IT department to support the 1,400 some odd employees, 29 buildings, 1 million square feet, some 2,000 computers, 700 servers. I mean, we have a lot of equipment and a lot of machinery to maintain, and that's the money that does it. I think the county board did a great job of trying to come up with funds for us to use the new staff and group of people that we have to make improvements and build out on the capital. But that's the money that we need to mobilize and get busy. We need to get it working for us. So I just wanted to point that out. That's what we're trying to get moving. And then the last one, this is the Judicial Facility Construction Fund. This is what the courts have been using as a way to help with the renovation projects. And they budgeted another $300,000 of money from their Judicial Facility Fund for capital projects for this year. So that's the end of the report. We do have a couple of resolutions, but if you have questions about the report, or if you want to ask after the meeting or follow up sometime by phone or email, be happy to help get answers.
I'm sure we all have your contact information, Henry's as well. Charles. Okay, should we just move on to the resolution then?
Facility.
If you're ready? That sound good? So, I'd accept a motion to authorization of a contract for Kane County HVAC maintenance and repair services. Moved by Ford, second by
Berman.
Berman.
Okay, so what you have in front of you is a contract for our HVAC maintenance and repair. We went out to bid with purchasing to get contractors for this. It's been about a month ago. We had, I think it was 6 responses. There's a synopsis in there. And what we're trying to do is award this to multiple vendors similar to the plumbing, because we have work in 29 buildings and we cannot always get a scheduled time or a response for any one individual or particular HVAC company. I'll use an example. For HVAC, we had a issue with the health department with their air conditioners and rooftop units. One of the vendors supplied us with a lead time of 26 weeks for rooftop units. The other one said they could do an emergency and get it to us in 3 to 4 weeks. So those types of decisions have to be made between vendors, scheduling and resources and availability. Some of them, like I think I mentioned yesterday at the county board, if they're not available, they will not pull people off of commercial jobs to come and do our work. So what we're asking for in this is to take the top, I believe it's 5 HVAC vendors. They will be on a roster of vendors that we can use. They all proposed on the contract, and they're listed there. There's One Source Mechanical. We have Hartwig Mechanical, Air Comfort, RJ O'Neill, and FE Moran. And I believe they're all fairly reputable. You may know some of them. We spend up to $1 million in building improvements on heating and air conditioning to maintain all of the heating and air conditioning systems, boilers, rooftop units. We have air handlers. So, you know, we're not saying that we will spend $1 million, but that's what our budget is. It's up to $1 million. We're asking to authorize the 5 vendors based on the bid and the most responsible bidders. It is a 3-year contract, and we have 2 one-year extensions built into it if everything is satisfactory. So the conclusion of this is that the recommendation is to award it to 5 vendors as stated in the resolution. And it's for a 3-year term with 2 extensions.
Okay, any questions on that?
Mr. Chairman,
Ford?
just one. Roger, do we have a list of our units, whether they're rooftops or boilers, with what date they was actually installed by chance?
We are working on inventory, and that's part of the preventative maintenance schedule. I don't know if we're done with that or not. Henry, can you speak to that? Inventory of all of the,
Yes, for like the 16 units that are at the health department that are due to be changed out. It's part of the EPA that we filed to have 9 of them replaced. Those units were installed in 2003. So they're at the point of 17 years old. So we had to make the decision if we were going to repair or we're going to replace. So we determined that replacing would probably be the best bet at this time.
But you were asking for a total,
yeah,
I just-
overall.
I mean, I know it could be a very
That-
complicated thing to do.
that's
but
so, sounds like a lot of units.
Once,
Thanks,
especially
sir.
rooftop, even
Well,
boilers.
That's a fair question though,
Yeah.
Mr. Ford, that I think from the FSI system, once we have the PM schedules in there, it should itemize all the inventory of, let's say we start with, HVAC, boilers, RTUs, we could have that kind of a list.
I do have the inventory for all the units and what you guys have in inventory. I just don't have the install dates.
Okay,
Oh,
okay.
Okay.
Cause once something hit about 20 years, I mean, that's
Yeah.
commercial
Yeah.
units, that's.
and
that's
we're,
quite a-
that's our, part of our preventive maintenance is having that information
Yes.
and the condition they're in. to-
I'm just trying to
foresee that.
support Roger on his efforts. That's what I'm doing.
Oh, good job.
I will tell you that we do have some supplemental information that was done when we did one of the condition assessments. I believe it was done, it was before 2020-ish. They actually had more details at one point on the some of the units. We're going to compare that to what goes into the PM. I haven't provided that to Henry yet. I found a copy of something where somebody had actually gone through and they'd done more inventory at one point. So we may get some of the actual install dates. Unfortunately, because you don't have a system tracking PMs and preventative service, a lot of the notes were more manual. They're, journal or book entries or not, they're maintained by the contractor. So
So, Mr. Chairman, the point of that was support Roger on that. This is Ford again. But also, just like we do our vehicles, once they get a certain age, we start putting the order in, and that's what's gonna help. This HVAC thing with timeline. I mean, I've heard anything from 6 to 18 months. I'm waiting for units. And I don't know if that's gonna change anytime soon. So that's one of the only ways we're gonna try to get ahead of the program, or at least get close to being caught up.
Catch up, so we're not always,
Mr. Chairman,
yeah, Mr. Linder?
observing here the locations of these the contractors,
Mhm.
we don't have a huge representation from local contractors. Is that because of their capacity to do the work or their willingness to bid, or did they bid too high?
So the work is publicly bid and it's through purchasing, and we also advertise it through a product called BidNet. So it goes out and it's a public solicitation. Anybody that's in the current system that's done this type of work gets notified. So if they've done the work in the county, they get notified as well. And we don't really control who responds.
Well, I guess my question is, did we have local bidders respond that were too high, or we just didn't have local bidders? Do you know?
The list of the synopsis was in the packet. These are the only.
Oh, it's in the
people that
packet.
responded.
Okay, I'll look
Yeah.
at that. I was just looking. Yep, thanks.
The list that responded.
Thank you.
So I'm sorry, I left the mic.
Oh.
Purchasing department receives all the sealed bids. They get them all and they open them, they compare them, and they give us the bid synopsis. And that's the bid synopsis sheet that they provided in the packet.
And so it's included in the package.
Yes, if we got 100 bids, they'd actually put 100 of them on there.
Looks pretty
So-
close.
And we got 6.
Or something.
And we chose 5. The highest bidder, the most expensive, was, we didn't think we needed to have a 6th, so we stopped at 5 and they pruned it to the 5 most responsible.
Alrighty. Any other questions? Then I'll ask for a roll call.
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Davis,
That was yes.
Ford, Young. He's gone. Juby,
Juby, yes.
Caius.
Yes.
Passes.
Okay, motion passes. On to IT.
All right, this
That
is
would be
Charles
Charles?
Lasky with the
Yeah.
IT department. This resolution is for our cellular service, so I can discuss that more after there's a motion second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sure. Thanks.
Davis
Sorry about
moves.
that. Keep us. Well, let me put this up here. I'll entertain a motion and it'll be from Mr. Davis authorizing wireless and data service contract with Cellco Partnership DBA Verizon Wireless, and it's moved by Davis, second by Berman.
So this resolution, as many of you know, and some of the new board members may not know, the IT department provides all the cellular devices for the county. So we provide the devices in the sheriff's vehicles. We provide everything that's used for elections and across elected offices and departments. We currently purchase off the Illinois state contract. It gives us pricing based on having over 10,000 devices, which we currently don't have. So the state of Illinois renewed their contract. And so this resolution is just to continue to use that contract to purchase our devices.
Okay.
So the coverage with Verizon across the county is very good. We don't get complaints. So we'd recommend approval of this.
Everywhere except the Walmart right by my house.
Really?
Coverage right there. I don't know why. Anyway, that was just my comment. Then, so is there any questions for Charles on this one? No, having none, roll call please.
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Davis,
That was yes.
Ford, Juby,
Juby, yes.
Caius.
Caius, yes.
Passes.
Motion passes. Item 8, Mill Creek SSA. Just go right to the resolution. May I have a motion and a second authorizing a contract for Mill Creek SSA snow plowing.
Berman moves.
Berman and Ford.
Okay. So you have a contract for the Mill Creek SSA snow plowing. This is from their SSA special fund. So it comes from their property taxes. The lowest responsible bidder and the company that they want to work with is Shamrock Landscape and Restoration out of St. Charles. It's a 3-year contract. And they had some additional things that they wanted to provide, some additional services, cover for the equipment that they put on site and some other things. So we're asking for the bid amount, which was $49,765, and a not to exceed $80,000 per fiscal year for the 3-year contract. Again, this is a budgeted expense for the Mill Creek SSA.
Which the SSA pays for.
Yep, it's not affect general fund or county.
Question? Mr.
Yes,
Chairman?
Mr. Ford.
Just out of curiosity, where do they store their salt at? I don't,
So there are on-site storage and they do have equipment and other things on site, and that's been the reason they wanted to have some cover. They're talking
okay,
about, whether it's screening or trees, the residents were saying they don't want to see the snow removal equipment.
okay.
So we're working with Shamrock and the vendors. Thankfully, we haven't had a lot of snow so far, so it's been kind of a good start for this season, but that's a constant battle out there. They also, I will tell you, if you have questions about the agreement and the pricing, this was a zero tolerance plan, which the advisory board wanted, which means that they get pre-treat salt types of salt services and snow removal for any accumulation. So it's a pretty aggressive, I think, plan for them, and that's what they wanted. So
Pay more if they have less per. They have a lot of snow, they make out okay.
yeah,
They don't-
but it's
But
zero,
doesn't- the
zero
budget
tolerance.
doesn't change.
Yeah, they were very specific that that's
Up
what
to
they
them.
wanted. So
They're spending their own money, so.
Okay, all right. Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Davis,
Davis, yes.
Ford,
Ford, yes.
Juby,
Juby, yes.
Caius.
Guys, yes.
Passes.
Motion passes. Item 9, vehicles. I don't believe we have any vehicles. Is there any new business from any board members? Yes, Ms. Juby?
So yesterday in our board meeting, there was a question about capital projects at certain buildings, and you were asked to put together a list with another, with the state's attorney about that. And
Yeah,
I just
okay.
want to comment that
sure.
while I thought that was an onerous list for you to be doing in the midst of everything else you're doing now, it looks like with your capital management system that those concerns will be addressed. Is that correct? That those
Well,
things will come up?
The
in your database?
They will when we're actually executing a project to remedy any issue with the building. So the things that were happening with certain buildings, I think we've itemized it down to 4 or 5 things that were going on. I talked to Mr. Thompson about it this morning again, and some of them are so minor and they're outside of warranty. I don't know if you'd want to litigate to try and address any of those. They're out of warranty. They, maybe they were built the way they were intended from the architect and by the construction company. Some of them, Henry and our team, we've actually had the contractors come out and they fix it for free on their time and their money because they acknowledge that it was not done correctly. Now, we've had a few that it's in dispute, and we have engaged the state's attorney's office. When those come back through, we will be engaging the state's attorney, and if it involves county capital money, you would get to see it here before we spent the money. And that might be a question for the civil division is it county capital or is it really an issue with the architect or the construction company? I think we only have one of those right now.
Okay, it was just
Yeah.
suggested that it be brought up at this
Sure,
particular committee.
sure.
And I just assumed with
Yeah.
everything you presented today that it's already
I-
being addressed. And so I didn't think we needed to ask for another.
We'll
set of
prepare the
data.
list. I will tell you probably the largest item of consideration on that list, and I think everybody here may know it, but it's the overhead doors. There were overhead doors that were built according to a plan, and after construction and everything is said and done, there's an opinion that the doors are too narrow, and the cost to widen those doors or to change that is probably the most substantial thing in that list. And I can discuss it further, but I think it's one of those things where we would want the state's attorney's office to be involved if we're going any further
It's
with
kind of a
that.
complicated subject
Yeah.
that we don't have, definitely that don't
Yeah.
have time to discuss.
It's something the state's attorney's office has been working with us on, but we did complete the punch list and we went through the entire project closing with them, and they did all their warranty repair work. But I do, at this point, Henry, is there anything, probably the lights are still under warranty and maybe the water softener?
Yes, Henry Thompson here, building management. Some of the major issues, some of the plumbing. for the MUB for what it was is the MUB's built a little bit higher than the JC, the adult jail. So we do have sewer gas that backs up into the building. So we constantly have to be adding mineral oil to the drains. Otherwise you get a stench that comes back. So we're looking into if the proper drainage was put in place. That's one of the major things that we want addressed. And then the lighting software, there was never anything given to building management to control the lighting, exterior lighting. So now the schedules are off. So sheriffs come out to fuel their cars and at 6 a.m. when it's still dark and there's no exterior lighting on. And we have no control over that lighting circuit.
And that was a design thing.
Yeah, there were some things like that where we're like, how are we ever supposed to manage that piece?
Mhm.
So it's either a gap or it's something that we put a control board in and fix it ourselves when we were looking at it, it's how much money are we talking about before you engage legal? And that's kind of the balancing act that we're doing.
Right. With the complication of having the architect also being the contractor that, the
So
project manager.
They were the construction manager and the owner
Yeah,
owner representative at the time.
Yeah.
So,
so it gets real complicated real fast.
I was just trying to do due diligence.
Yeah,
so-
a good
well,
idea.
we
Yeah,
are
yeah.
gonna address.
I
it,
don't,
though.
I think
Yeah.
that, as you go along, that's good vision on your part. I think
Yeah.
the people that have been involved in this sort of thing have seen that we're definitely improving our process here, which is going to make sure that that kind of situation doesn't occur. We shouldn't have to take it all the way to litigation. Or, it should go fast anyway. Okay, anything else on new business from anybody? No old business? Can I have a motion and a second to place reports on file?
So moved. Davis.
Davis moves,
Berman second.
Berman second. Roll call, please.
Berman,
Yes.
Davis,
Davis, yes.
Ford, Juby,
Yes.
Caius.
Yes. Motion passes. No need for executive session. Can I have a motion and a second to adjourn? Moves,
Berman second.
Berman seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Well,
Thank you.
hour and 20.